So if you've been in an accident and it involves a truck, a commercial vehicle on the other side, it's very important that you get to an experienced attorney that handles truck accident cases. One of the biggest reasons is the coverages that are involved. And I will use an example. Years ago, I was talking to a potential client. She was with a different law firm, a big advertising law firm, and they were telling her the coverage on this truck is $300,000, and it was multiple people involved in the accident. It was a family. They were in a van and hit by a commercial vehicle near a toll booth lane. I said, that doesn't make sense that there's not different coverages. Why? Because we had handled truck cases in what's called interstate commerce between states. And if vehicles and trucking cases are in interstate commerce, they have to have what's called an MCS 90 endorsement on that vehicle, which includes $1 million of coverage. So I said, if this person is operating legally, which it appeared to be based on their DOT number and everything else we could find, legally, they have to have more than $300,000 in coverage. What you're hearing is not correct. Don't take $300,000 lump sum for your family, because these people had some serious injuries. Don't take that sum, because that's gonna be less than what you could get. We actually ended up taking that case, and it turned out there was that $1 million MCS 90 endorsement, and they got much more than that. What also is important is there's a lot more to delve into with trucking cases versus just a regular person on the road. First of all, there's regulations that are involved with trucking. And sometimes we can find out by looking at trip logs, daily logs, things like that, we can find out that trucking companies, especially drivers, have violated provisions where they've driven for too long, where they've driven for 24 hours straight, where they're not allowed to. And those things can impact tremendously the liability of that driver and the trucking company, because trucking companies have to keep detailed information about the vehicle, about the driver, and about everything that's going on, where an individual can come in and testify, I slept well the night before, and I was doing this and that, where we can look at the trucking company records and show they were on the road for 16 hours straight. They're not allowed to do that. Here's why, by the way, they did that for 5 days straight. And that increases the liability, and it explains potentially why that driver may have caused the crash. And that's something we can use. Now, a lot of trucks anymore have GPS on them, because the commercial drivers want to know, the owners want to know where the drivers are at. A lot of them have dash cams. A lot of them have split dash cams that'll show not only what's going on in front of the vehicle, but what's going on inside of that cab. Why is that important? Because we can show if the person's distracted, or they were using their phone, or they were taking a drink, or they were doing something else, because of that split dash cam that's going to show that vehicle. Most individuals don't have dash cams in their vehicle, and the few that do don't usually have that split dash cam. And that's something that's very important to get. And also, when you say get, if you don't go to a truck accident attorney like Beers and Gordon early in the case, that data may be gone. If you don't ask for data right away, and it gets taken out by the trucking company, because they are under no obligation technically to preserve that data until a truck accident attorney like us tells them, hey, preserve that data. Even if you're not going to give it to us before litigation, you have an obligation to preserve. If you don't, it's called the spoliation of evidence. We're going to have a claim against you. They know that. They know an attorney's involved. Otherwise, they're really under no technical obligation to do that. And if you don't have a truck accident attorney involved quickly and early in a case, it can severely impact you, because sometimes people say, well, I'll wait a month or two to call an attorney, or I'll talk to my friend who dabbles in personal injury law and they know a little bit about car accidents. But by the time it gets to us, and it's been 45, 60 days, that information's gone, and that information could have proven your case. And that could cause a big problem in truck accident cases. If you make a preservation request and you do it correctly, like we would do at Beers and Gordon, and the company fails to preserve that evidence, here's what happens if we go to trial. You get what's called an inference of negligence. Basically, the court instructs the jury that it's inferred that they were negligent, and that's why they destroyed the evidence, and that's why they didn't keep it. That's why it's so important to put them on notice to preserve the evidence. Most of the time they do, but I've certainly been involved in cases where they haven't, and we are going to trial or getting ready for trial telling them, you're not going to really have a defense at trial because you didn't do what you were supposed to do up front. The companies know that case law, and they know, and then it just creates that extra leverage point to get the case resolved for the client and get the best possible results for them. Most trucking companies, if it's a bad accident, bad injuries especially, or even unfortunately a death case, the first thing they're going to do is send someone out from that trucking company to the scene, and they're going to start doing an investigation right away of that accident. And that's why it's important to have an attorney starting to do that investigation with as quickly as possible to counteract that investigation, because they show up at the scene. They usually show up with a safety director. They're starting to take pictures. They may even start to take witness statements, and they're doing everything at that point to protect the driver of their vehicle and the trucking company from any liability in this case. And that's their goal at that point, for most times, is to protect themselves and to protect that driver from any and all liability. And they'll do it right there at the scene. So it's very important that if you're involved in an accident with a truck, that you do not get involved with making statements and various things like that to someone else other than the police, which you should do and you have an obligation to do. But also to get that attorney involved, like Beers and Gordon, early in that case, so we can get information about that and have discussions about any other investigation that needs to take place. So trucking cases, sometimes people ask me, well, John Smith was driving the truck. I want to go after John's policy and I want to go after the trucking company's policy. It doesn't work that way. Here's why. The driver is on the clock. If he's in what the legal field calls the course and scope of his employment, and more importantly, if he's operating a vehicle owned by the trucking company, they're liable for his actions or her actions, if it's a female driver, while they're driving that truck. They're not. Their personal policy would disclaim insurance at that point for them because they're on the clock working for someone. It's frankly the same way if nowadays people drive for Uber. And in Uber cases, sometimes people say, well, what about the personal policy? If you look at most of your personal policies now, it'll exclude for what's called ride sharing, which to most people know is as Uber or Lyft. They will not cover you while you're doing ride sharing, but while that app is on, you are actually under Uber's policy, and you can sue Uber, and then you're suing Uber and the driver of the vehicle, who's what's called an independent contractor. If you've been involved in an accident with a commercial vehicle, what we call a trucking accident, call the experienced attorneys at Beers and Gordon. And here's why. We're going to be able to do the investigation right away. We're going to know the right questions to ask that trucking company and the right questions to ask you to properly handle that case. And then during the pendency of that case, we're going to treat you like family and get the best possible results for you. So when you've been involved in an accident with a commercial vehicle, call us at Beers and Gordon, 407-862-1825, or visit our website to learn even more about what we know about truck accidents at beersandgordonlaw.com.